Hi everyone, this is Carrick from Angry Centaur Gaming. I bring you this review from deep within the Blighted Lands, neck deep in Skaven guts and sweaty orc nuts. If you've received this message, you know I'm dead, and it's best to run the other way, and don't even think of coming to save me like all the other stupid death notes would request to start out a quest. Why am I here, you ask? Why did I perish under the onslaught of enemies? Well, it's to bring you the truth of straight down, cardboard cutout looking video games, and this one is from the age-old past. A game that was a successor to Hero Quest and its more advanced brother, the aptly named Hero Quest Advanced. You see this game as Warhammer Quest, which, if you've been paying any attention, also has Quest in the name, because these games aren't above smashing you in the face with what they're about. But we'll get to the game's insane microtransactions at a later time. Let's bust this thing open. Is Warhammer Quest a sublime tutorial on how to make a board game into a video game without ruining the ambiance and the BO and chip smell of role-playing dens across the world? Or is it nothing more than a cash-in, a game that goes up against the likes of Talisman and other recent board game style games to come to the digital front? Let's check it out. So bloody your thumbs on your axes, brothers, prepare your healing salves, and let's rub some dirt on your wounds. It's time to review. Graphics are up first. Warhammer Quest is delivered to you via the new and patented pigeon view, top-down, no-angle, God's view from on high. Warhammer Quest is about mimicking the board game in every way, and that starts with the view of the main board, which is just a direct copy of the board game, looking down on square pieces of cardboard and deciding their fate, probably exactly like politicians deciding important votes. What that also inevitably means is the game isn't heavy on its graphical presentation, unless you consider the loading screens when arriving at cities between quests, which is actually a fairly good view of the creation of a city from parts, which makes you feel a little bit like you're at your local game shop watching somebody place parts down for a heady and epic adventure. Detailed this is not, though, and if you're thinking about getting into Warhammer Quest to see some awesome spells or some good effects, you best turn around now, because there is none of that. The animation is bare bones as it comes, which is still more animation than some other board game conversions come with. And while the boards and the characters and the enemies they rub up against in their best rendition of reenacting the fight scenes of Braveheart with only 6 people, you aren't going to be impressed with the graphics unless you are old school. I felt that at times the graphics of the game mimic the board game very well, and that is what I wanted, but it was also a little bit too minimalistic. At other times I felt like the guy at the glory hole who doesn't have the length needed to clear the plywood wall, just disappointed, uncomfortable, and limp. I admit their additions in the digital forum actually felt more odd than add, because there's a middle ground here that needs to be established. You either aim directly for a 100% copy of the board game, or you try to do more and give yourself something that brings attention to the unique additions to the game's graphics and presentation you're trying to bring. Sadly, all Warhammer Quest did was make me wonder why the additions were there in the first place. Sometimes you gotta pick a side. In fact, after a couple hours of playing, I began to feel all the extra graphics representations of things going on in the world were about as useless as a gasoline-filled tic-tac. Fun, but only for a brief moment before the horror kicked in and you wondered what everyone was thinking when they did it. Overall, it's a good representation of the original game, but the presentation needs to shit or get off the pot, and throwing in some weak animations and so forth didn't do much for me, especially when it comes to upgrading and representing better equipment, which I'll get to in a moment. Sound, music, and voice. I admit the sound effects did what they were supposed to, which is accurately representing what was occurring on the screen at the time. However, since the game is such a basic turn-based affair, the sounds come few and far between, and if there was any ambient sound to speak of, I can't actually speak of it because I didn't hear it. The game could have done with some cool wind blowing through the tunnels, like a recording of the gynecologist's office during a contestant on The Bachelorette getting a health screening. Just something. But there is nothing instead. It's just absolute silence unless you're actually doing something. I would have loved more sound. And next up is music, and at least the music was playing throughout the entire part of the game. This stuff is actually great, from the title screen to the battle music to the ambient traveling music, as my 4 heroes, armed with nothing more than a couple weapons and some toilet paper to shove into gaping wound holes, explored the world. Honestly, it was very good and fitting music, with a lot of use from the drum section of the local guitar center's on sale section. The game is heavy on the percussion and the driving string sections, and that's actually exactly what you would need to get your blood boiling right before you click on the little blocky character to watch him poke another little blocky character. Excellent music throughout. Voice. I was actually really surprised by the voice. Who am I kidding? There's no voice. And once again, we're finding another game that has decided to sidestep voice and go with written narrative throughout. This is especially sad when the characters you can choose would have been far more connected in some way to you if they'd made sound while fighting their way through what looks like a Calcutta alleyway during an undead festival. I would have loved some voice, and since the game really does sort of want you to connect with these characters somewhat, I feel that the lack of voice just hurts it a little bit. Sure, they make sounds when they hit things, but that's just not the same. Gameplay. First, there's no multiplayer. That's like showing up for a race on the wrong day and then realizing you didn't even bring a car, so you just run around in the grass, kicking up dirt, yelling vroom vroom at the sky, and hoping everyone there won't notice. Adding multiplayer could have easily lofted this game up a couple notches, especially since, the original was a multiplayer game. But hey, let's forget that. Let's just go play Battleship alone. That sounds like fun, and it makes sense because computers don't have an easy way to connect to one another. God, wouldn't that be awesome to have some kind of web that people could connect to one another with things like cable and phone lines? Yeah, wouldn't that be wonderful magic? It's fairly simple. You take 4 adventurers from an assortment of available dudes, dudettes, and questionable gender elves into the field of battle to explore dark dungeons, caves of doom, and other not varied landscapes. Battles are turn-based, with all heroes and enemies having different stats for moving and different skills for attacking. Some characters have special skills that can help others, while many of them have special skills that simply involve them smashing the enemy even harder in the face than they originally planned to. Special skills with the names like Mighty Swing, Bane of Undead, Ward Save, and Starlance. It sounds more like a romantic adventure metal band name generator than anything else. But let's be honest, that has always been the flavor of Games Workshop stuff, and it really does fit here. And you can also upgrade your heroes with new weapons and equipment that come in 3 categories: common, uncommon, and rare. And it's all just a fairly basic affair and mimics the board game well, and it's easy to follow. Each dungeon or adventure location has a central theme, and many times that theme is pre-civilization blood and crust, with dirty areas looking like places no sane person would want to fall down and cut themselves in. The locations all have small quest logs that play at the starting of the quest and boil down to: here's an object of smashing, slashing, cutting, burning, or shooting. Go out and smash, slash, cut, burn, or shoot the enemy until they're dead. Then steal their shit, see ya. Most of the boards are fair to middling in size, but that keeps the adventuring going at a steady pace, even if many places look alike, because frankly they're all just using the same boarded pieces used in different order. When you go back to the city, you can upgrade, which also has places to pray, to get random assorted bonuses, training centers to buy new moves for your warriors, and an adventurers guild to buy more adventurers to play the game with. And here lies the rub. This game is infected with microtransactions. I don't think you could become more infected unless you had questionable sex under a concrete overpass with a copy of the game tucked under one of your arms as the only protection you brought against prostitutes +4 and a goon with questionable limp +2. Everything is bought with them, and the fact that you can barely get enough gold to replace the breaches you shat in the last time you faced a Skaven horde with a bone to pick and a desire to swim around on your insides, the grind to buy things without purchasing in-game gold or buying heroes outright seems lengthy indeed. To get everything in the Warhammer Quest store, it's $45, which is shockingly close to what a normal game can cost you. In fact, it feels very much like the game that gives you the absolutely barest of basics, then makes grinding for stuff long and torturous so that you can put the win button right there at your fingertips just in case you decide you want to drop your normal sword for the Sunfang, which just sounds cool enough to get someone to buy it for $1, like that fucker in the original RoboCop movie. Whatever, I hate it. It felt grindy and shady, and the way the store is presented with not only purchasable items in one place, but a separate place to tank off your gold, which helps you level up and so forth, it just left a very foul, dirty taste in my mouth. Fun factor. Listen, I love board game renditions. I must have like 45 versions of Monopoly. I have Talisman on many systems, Blood Bowl, and even some of those made by fan conversions of HeroQuest, and they're great shit. However, one of the differences between all those games and this one is that they picked a side, improved to a high degree the original game with flashy, eye-catching graphics to augment the solid gameplay, or deliver the exact board game rendition while you sit on your fat ass too lazy to pick out 1,000 counters that the board game originally came with. Warhammer Quest meanders drunkenly in the middle ground, too stupid to get out of the center of the road and realize it's already got what it needs to make a fun game, if only it hadn't slept with a corporate whore Miss Microtransaction without some kind of protection like acceptable grind rates and laudable handouts for quest rewards. So as you know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, rent, or sacrifice on the altar of Slaanesh rating scale. This is a wait for a sale. I can't in good conscience suggest people buy a game that many times feels like a fancy GUI interface for a microtransaction store, and especially when that game has gone so lean on the animation and graphics representations that $2.99 is buying you nothing more than guys dying faster than they did for almost no apparent reason. You know, at times the game gets close to being good in the way that not being shot in the junk during a robbery is good, but you still lose your cash and manhood. And here, you also lose a bit of your time and soul and the excitement to continue, even if the original promise had been enough to get you to get out of the house. Sorry guys, that's just the way I roll, and I'm taking my Troll Slayer and going home because I can make these same in-app purchases for my own board game by getting a post-it note writing the word Sunfang +1 to damage and leaves victims burning on it, like digital gonorrhea. So that's it for me, adventurers. It's time for me to truss up my drawers, sling my bag over my shoulder, and head off into the land of broken dreams and shattered hopes in search for my god Carlinicus. May your adventures be exciting and free of burning when you pee. Peace out.